All right, settle down. Thanks for being here, folks, and welcome to our comedy show. We've got a great lineup for you tonight, and, actually, it's just the one. Everyone else canceled. Wait, you're serious? Why are you just now telling me? Ha, that's not my job. You're in charge of scheduling guests. It's literally your job. Oh, come on. That wasn't funny. Well, in any case, please welcome to the stage, Arnold.
Hello. I have a question for you. What is the spookiest kind of author? A ghostwriter. That's the joke. Laugh! Do it! Now! That's better. Let's try another one. Why are writers always cold? They're surrounded by drafts! Yeah, that's one of my best ones. Okay, here's one that I know is going to land. What is the funniest joke of all? The Saved as Draft podcast!
Hey, wait a second. That joke was at my expense. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 61 of the Saved as Draft podcast. This week's episode is all about comedy. My guest this week is Lynn Harris, the founder of Gold Comedy, which is a comedy school, professional network, and content studio centered around women and non-binary creators who want to build a career in comedy. Lynn herself is also an award-winning journalist and novelist. She has published 6 books ranging from fiction to non-fiction, including Death by Chicklet and Breakup Girl to the Rescue. She's also been published in the New York Times, Salon, Glamour, and in many other publications over the course of her 25-year career. I'm really excited to share this amazing interview with you all, so look forward to that later in the episode. Before that, we'll take a look at our community spotlight, our weekly shoutouts, and of course, our weekly writing discussion. For this week's community spotlight, I'd like to shout out Hallie Jules. Hallie was my guest on episode 54 of the podcast, and she herself is a comedy writer, so who better to feature in this comedy-centric episode? Hallie's series on Substack, It's All Greek to Phil, is still one of the funniest and most relatable things I've read on here. She also just recently launched a new publication called The Hot Mess Press, which offers content for authors trying to get published and insights that Hallie has learned in her journey thus far. If you're looking for hilarious and down-to-earth writing, I cannot recommend Hallie's work enough. I'm also excited to see how her new publication progresses. You'll find a link to Hallie's work in the show notes, and be sure to subscribe to both of her publications so you don't miss any updates. Alright, and that's housekeeping sorted. Let's dive into this week's shoutouts right after a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by the Harry Heckler doll, the best way for new comedians to practice dealing with jerks in their audience. Okay, that's my set. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Really? That's all you got for me?
Well, I laughed, didn't I?
Yeah, but what happens when I run into a tough crowd or a heckler?
Well, what about trying out this new Harry Heckler doll? It has over 300 realistic phrases and interruptions. You can even choose your difficulty.
Wow, sounds pretty cool. What are the difficulty settings?
Let's see. It starts with jerk, and then it goes up to drunk and chatty, and then the highest difficulty is someone who thinks they can write better jokes than you.
Ha, amazing. Okay, put it right in the middle and I'll test it out. I want to make sure I've got my rebuttals locked in. You know, the best way to handle a heckler is to shut him down.
Okay, it's ready.
So, anyway, I was walking down the street and...
Boo! Nobody walks in this city. There's no sidewalks.
Who said that? Hey, let's get the light on them.
Hey, yeah, it was this guy right here.
What's your name, sir?
Harry Heckler, at your service. And here's another free tip. Your comedy sucks. Don't quit your day job.
Speaking of day jobs, what does a doll like you do for work?
I work in city infrastructure.
Okay, not what I expected, but now that I know that, you're the last person who should be complaining about a lack of sidewalks.
Oh, ho, ho! You got him. That was good. Thanks.
Tired of hecklers catching you off guard? Get your very own Harry Heckler doll today and learn how to shut down the haters. Use code HATERBLOCKERS at checkout for 10% off. All right, and we're back. Every week I open a thread in my subscriber chat on Tuesdays where you can share your work. I pick 5 at random to talk about on the show here. Now, this week I had to move things around, so I'll be picking 5 links from prior shoutout threads. And remember, if you share links in my weekly subscriber chat thread for these, I also share them with Mina Howell and her Penny Dreadfuls podcast. So, one link gets you 2 chances for a feature. And in this week's case, I'll be looking for stories that didn't get a shout out in the past. Let's dive in and see what we got this week. First up this week is The Winter Council by Loki Cone. This poem was published back in February as part of Save the Word Sunday, Week 13, which are prompts from JC, poet here on Substack. This piece was truly amazing. Right off the bat, the word choice and the rhymes blew me away. Some of these rhymes are really complex, well above anything I've been able to do in my poetry. It's really impressive stuff. The imagery is striking as well. Beautiful metaphors here for perseverance and for pushing forward despite struggles. It's a powerful and wonderfully written poem. Let's check out an excerpt. The critic stands on ice and points his blade at every heart that ventures unafraid. But I have learned what creatures know by birth, that life runs deeper than the frozen earth. Come rest with me in tunnels made of white, where darkness holds a different kind of light. And let this quiet refuge refociliate the parts of us the surface cannot sate. For love, like grass beneath the winter sheet, needs neither sun nor momus to complete its patient work of threading root through stone, of making in the cold a warmer home. Stunning work from Loki Cone, as always. Love that one. All right, next up is a look at J.M. Gooding's ongoing serial, Stillwater. J.M. submitted a link to the table of contents a few weeks back, so I'm going to read the prologue and share my thoughts. You'll find that same link to the TOC as well in the show notes. And with this series, we have a perfect synopsis right on this first page from J.M. himself, which reads, Stillwater follows a group of survivors fleeing the collapse of Florida after the dead begin to appear. Traveling up the St. Johns River and then south along the coast, they take to the sea in a weathered ketch, searching for refuge on a cruise ship island in the Bahamas. Along the way, they discover that survival is not defined by the infected alone, but by the difficult choices the living must make for one another as the old world disappears behind them. As someone who grew up in Florida and someone who loves zombie fiction, this series was practically written for me. In this table of contents, we'll find links to the first chapters of the story, which is still ongoing, in addition to a prequel from Flash Fiction February. And in terms of the prologue that I read this week, J.M. is really firing on all cylinders with this series. His goal with the story is to create something slower and less trope-driven than other apocalyptic fiction. In that regard, he has absolutely succeeded here. The world building is pitch perfect. It feels familiar, yet fresh. There's a nice mashup of elements. For example, it's established that zombies lose their mobility as time goes on, so the freshly infected are quieter and more of a threat than the shambling ones who've been rotting for some time. The characters here also deserve a special shout out. There's a really nice setup and introduction for everyone here, with real emotional beats that tap into fear, desperation, and optimism. J.M. Gooding is an incredible writer, and I knew this going in, but this prologue is truly some of his best work. Let's check out an excerpt. Finney presses a warm beer into my hand. Sarge thinks it's time to go. I look over to Sarge and speak a little louder than I mean to. Yeah, I've been running the numbers. A week, if that. We're running out of fuel. We're running out of Dad's insulin. If we stay, we'll have to scavenge past Publix. Sarge nods. And we run into more of those hunters. I exhale through my nose. So what's the plan? We get a boat in the water, sail the St. John's to the Intercoastal, then head south to Miami and east to Shipwreck Cay. Sarge doesn't blink. I let out a chuckle. The cruise ship island? Vinny nods. Yeah, think about it, Danny. They've got panels and generators, big fuel reserves, desalination. We can fish, maybe even find animals on the other islands. I don't answer right away. Shipwreck Cay. I remember the commercials. Blue water, white sand, staff paid to smile like nothing bad could ever happen to you there. It feels obscene now, even as an idea. How many people? I ask. Vinny shrugs. Us? Rachel and the kids? Your folks? Sarge? Maybe a few more if they haven't burned their bridges. How many boats?
1.
Sarge says. He crushes the empty can in his hand, drops it into the fire pit where it hisses and blackens.
2 if we need it.
I look past him, down the street toward the barricades. The dead are there. I don't have to see them to know it. Wow, so good. Seriously, already hooked. Cannot wait to read more of this one. Third this week is Prodigy Part 1 by Mina Howell. This story is actually for Day 7's Flash Fiction February prompt last month, and as always, Mina's managed to both surprise and impress me with the sheer depths of her writing skills. The prompt here was about someone who finds out their father was a serial killer and they need to carry on the family business. In this case, Mina puts us in the shoes of the daughter of famous painter Caspar David Friedrich. Now, in real life, Caspar was not a serial killer, but was in fact a renowned German landscape painter. In fact, his piece Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog is one of my favorite paintings of all time, so that's a really cool connection here. But yes, Mina imagines an alternate history where he was a serial killer, and we get an awesome story about how his daughter learned to not only paint, but also how to participate in that side of the family business. The setting and concept here are really unique and very interesting right off the bat. Mina does a great job of transporting us back to the late 1800s, and the subtle horror is excellent throughout the entire piece. It's part 1 of a series, so you can bet I'll be reading the rest as soon as I can. This was a great start. Here's an excerpt. As I grew, he began to let me out of the carriage as soon as we arrived. There was always something incredibly heavy in the trunk, and he wasn't getting any younger. I was always eager to help, even when I had to dig a hole larger than I. In retrospect, I think that I was so pleased that my father had begun to include me, I overlooked the blood and hair that sat like a paste in the bottom of the trunk. As soon as I could dig the hole and paint, my father allowed me to spectate another part of his ritual. We would sit in the back of the royal salons together, watching the new talent try to break into the art world. Whoever showed the most promise, we invited back to our home so that we may be their sponsor. We would wine and dine them, allowing them to return to their room full and drunk. Once we were sure they wouldn't wake up, we took them. At first, I only watched as my father delicately slid a knife across their throat. The spray of blood flowed effortlessly, like the fountains at Versailles. Whew! Chilling final line in that excerpt. Really great story here. Love seeing Mina try out these new concepts and settings. It's great stuff. Next up, we've got Letter Number 5 by Rebecca Watson and Jesse Laverton. This is part of Rebecca's Ink That Waits series, in which she writes a letter and asks writers to respond any way they like. Then she posts both sides on her publication. I was a participant myself a while back, so I'm excited to share someone else's take on the series. In this one, the opening letter from Rebecca is a heartbreaking reflection on a relationship that made them feel small and filled them with resentment. And Jesse's response is equally powerful. It accepts but also deflects with the other side of the story. It's a really interesting meditation on perspectives and relationships like this. And even though it's fiction, it resonates deeply with my own experience in my life. Let's check out an excerpt from Jesse's response. I stand accused, I see. I'm accused of being the unreasonable one, accused of withholding clarity, accused of inertia. And the one with the sharpest sting. I am the reason you folded yourself into a smaller, muted version of you. I hear you. I sometimes loathe the part of myself you accuse in your letter. But there's another part of me you've overlooked, the part of me which never asked. I never asked you to be reasonable. I never asked you to be smaller. I never asked you to stay on this island for me. I never asked for these things because I knew that I could not hold everything you contained. I learned nothing when you say I got an edited version of you. I know this because the bigger you could never stay completely confined. I glimpsed your tender unfolding. The restraint you speak of sometimes unraveled. There were moments when you stopped pretending not to hurt, not because you wanted to show your pain, but because it had ceased to twist in your chest. Wow, incredible. Love this series from Rebecca. This is a great entry. Highly recommend checking it out. Remember, links to all these in the show notes. All right, and our final shout out this week is Cracks in the Flesh Fissure by Edward Marlowe Ruiz. And it has been way, way too long since I talked about Edward's work on the podcast here. He was actually one of my first interviews on the show. And the thing about Edward's work is that he finds the beauty in horror in ways that I've never been able to capture myself. He can make something absolutely terrifying feel beautiful and enticing simply through the magic of his word choice. With this piece, that ability of his is concentrated into a poem, and that means every line hits like a gut punch. It's personal, it's grandiose, it's crushing, and it's endlessly intriguing as well. The amount of sheer presence Edward has in his work is incredible to see. And honestly, my description here won't even do it justice, so let's check out an excerpt. Delusions of grandeur. Just let us worm through the worth, while the earth covers us in dirt. Tuck into me, I'll hold on to us. Either way, let's level things. Are we supposed to? I have no idea. Maybe things are just as uneven down under as they are up over. Maybe. Body and mind sunder below the weight of constraint and compulsion. Two halves made into one whole with me, just bones and skin, hollowed from the onset of sin. Incredible. Amazing work as always. And thank you to everyone who submitted links. And remember, check out all the links to everything in this week's shoutouts in the show notes. Give these authors some love. This is fantastic stuff. And next up is our weekly writing discussion. But first, a quick mindful moment. Hey there. This is Chill Bradley, here with this week's mindful moment. Here's a quote to consider. Some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it is letting go. Hermann Hesse. Letting go is something that carries a lot of connotations. In some cases, it means letting go of something that no longer serves you. In other cases, it means letting go of the past, or letting go of pain that you're holding on to. And as we all know, letting go is rarely as simple as it sounds. Sometimes we don't even realize we're holding on to something until we take a step back and really allow ourselves to see it. It's a process, that much is true, but in many cases it's also necessary. In my case, this quote is a reminder that I can't keep holding on to things that are gone, or clinging to something that isn't good for me simply because I see it as stability. If we want to reach the goals we have for ourselves and our writing, we have to learn to let go and step into the unknown. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. All right, and for this week's writing discussion, I asked how you approach comedy in your writing. You know the drill. I open these threads weekly in my subscriber chat, and if you take the time to respond, I'll take the time to read your answers on the show. So let's dive in and see what people had to say about writing comedy. All right, and first up, Mina Howell says, I honestly have a hard time with comedy, even though my comedy during Flash Fiction February was my highest rated story. In that piece, I really leaned into my frustration at The Sims, but other than that, I find that my humor is kind of too dry to translate well. That doesn't mean I don't try every time, though. Yeah, comedy is one of those things where I feel like it's taken me most of my writing career to kind of lock in my style and to become confident in it. And I know that like the jokes on Saved as Draft here, for example, don't always land, but as long as you're having fun and you're putting your all into it, there's an audience for it and people will find it funny. And for the record, that Sims one was very relatable, so I'm not surprised that it scored so well. Next up, Every Root, Every Thorn says, I usually try to put some form of absurdity in there somewhere. It's definitely a hard balance when writing horror. I actually just wrote a piece of pure comedy fan fiction in the style of the Trailer Park Boys that seemed to land pretty well. Check it out here if you're interested, and they did put a link in their response. The thing I love about Trailer Park Boys is how much it takes absurdity and misunderstandings to the extreme without really, sort of, in parentheses, harming anyone. No, that's great, and I appreciate the link here. I'll have to check that one out. And yeah, absurdity is definitely something that I pull into my comedy, especially when it's alongside horror. I think, horror is already kind of exaggerated, so having equally exaggerated comedy makes sense. Good response. Mary Ellen Brady says, me in comedy, I lean into the absurd and hope it lands. The Alien Support Group story, it made me giggle, so fingers crossed and I post. Timing, no clue, I'm still experimenting. Totally fair answer, Mary Ellen. But yes, your comedy always hits. I really love the Alien Support Group story. For those who are unaware, I actually narrated that one for her since she was the winner of the first indulgence. And that was a really fun story to narrate. When read out loud, the comedy really landed. Great stuff. Next up, J. Allen Winchester says, I used to struggle with comedy because most of my life was serious. and my family was kind of in a weird twilight zone of culture and timelines. My sense of humor didn't vibe with my peers when I got to public school, so I thought for a while I wasn't funny. Years down the road, I learned that my humor stems from irony, character interactions, and wordplay. I spent a lot of time watching shows I found funny to figure out pacing and timing, from Coming of Age to Monty Python's Flying Circus. Once I started my revival sagas, I found that readers enjoyed my humor, so I'm less intimidated to write it. However, I will never claim to be a comedian, and I doubt I could write a genre-focused comedy story. I think I'm too boring sometimes to think up enough for a whole plot, but my wife says I play a great straight man trope in our odd couple improv. That's great. I love when you and your partner can get involved with writing and with comedy too. For example, Sarah's been on the show here for some of the sponsors in the past. I have to bring her back soon for that. But yeah, no, this was great. And yeah, really nice point there from Jaden about looking to other examples and kind of analyzing them for the timing that they use. Because again, that's something I asked this week, is how do we translate the timing of comedy into the writing? Because everyone's going to read at different speeds. Jokes are going to land differently based on how someone's reading it. So it's like, how do you account for that? And so that's a great suggestion there from Jaden. Next up, Jennifer Jorgensen says, I'm a big believer in humor in my real life, and my whole family is big on laughter, especially shared laughter. So I use comedy a lot, though admittedly it's mostly dry humor and sarcasm. It's what I do when I talk and deal with my everyday, so it translates pretty naturally into my writing. At least, people seem to get the joke most of the time. As for how I do it, I have no idea. I just do. No, that's a great answer. And Jennifer does do really great comedy in her writing. I think it's one of those things where it's like, if it's something that, you're around people who are cracking jokes and just having fun in real life, you kind of pick up subconsciously an ear for those sort of things in your writing. So it just comes naturally at that point. I love that. J.M. Gooding says, I don't intentionally write comedy, just comes out that way. I have a very dry sense of humor, and it's not for everybody, so I tend to not write comedy. It's more like comedic tension, I guess. No, and from what I've read of JM's work, I think that's a fair assessment. I like dry comedy myself, and I like how in JM's stories, the comedy comes through, and it's almost unexpected. It's like he said, it's comedic tension. It kind of builds a different kind of tension, with the release being not a jump scare, but laughter. So I love it. Next up, Serafina Alessi says, more satire than straight up. Haha. Here's a piece I recently published, a conversation between two people. Okay, great. And there's a link there in the thread. Remember, I'll link to this thread in the show notes. You can check out some of these examples as well. Daniel Coates says, I tend to just write my own humor and things that make me laugh, though I've been meaning to study A1 Dave Boyko for his skill at writing comedy. That's true. Dave's stories are really funny, so that's a great person to be looking at for inspiration here on Substack. Highly recommend his work. Next up, Dan Singer, or Dan Katz, says, I'm too bloody serious to be able to write comedy, though I do like dark humor and sometimes even manage to include it in my writing. Hey, you know what? Dark humor is definitely a valid approach. A lot of people enjoy that, so it's a niche that has an audience for sure. Next up, LG Wells says, as for your topic, I tend to write a fair bit of sarcasm and or self-deprecating humor into my stories. And yeah, that is probably 95% me coming through in my characters. I also find that in horror or other tension-packed stories, comedy can serve as a life rope for readers, kind of like an easy level in a game. Allow them a breath or two. Comedy, sarcasm, and even inappropriate laughter are also great tools to highlight a character trait. You and I just use these in a collab project. That's true. That tough guy that always jokes when things get tense is probably not as tough as he claims to be. Really good point there about characters. So yeah, I am a firm believer in using comedy as a tool in any genre. Of course, there are limits, and I don't profess to know those, but there is a line between comedic accents and full-on comedy. Maybe that's a discussion starter. It absolutely is, LG. We'll have to consider that for a future writing discussion. But I loved your points here about using comedy to reveal character. Really nice example there. Next up, Verdant Butterfly says, a writer who wants to be funny should begin by noticing the small absurdities of daily life. For example, every household has a chair, not a normal chair, a chair that holds sweaters, mail, a grocery receipt from 2023, and somewhere in that chair is the mitten you need from February. No one sits in this chair. Its purpose is purely archival. If you write about that chair honestly, readers will laugh because they have one too. The second trick is exaggeration. Real life is funny, but real life with just a little stretch becomes comedy. If your dog steals a sock, that's an inconvenience. If your dog steals socks so often that you begin buying them in single units and labeling them for the dog, well, now you have humor. A writer's job is not to invent ridiculous things. Life has already done that. Our job is to point at them politely and say, "You're seeing this too, right?" Timing also matters. A joke should arrive the way a cat jumps onto a keyboard, suddenly, with no warning, and usually in the middle of something important. If you explain the joke beforehand, it dies quietly like a houseplant someone forgot to water. This is why humor often works best when the writer sounds perfectly serious. You describe the situation calmly, logically, and with great dignity, right up until the moment IT squirrels are dropping from the ceiling. Humor is not about being clever, it's about recognition. The reader laughs because somewhere in their own kitchen, there's also a mysterious lid that fits no container in the house. That's very true. When you show them that moment, they feel less alone in the strange mess of ordinary life. And that, in the end, is the real magic of humor. That and the quiet satisfaction of realizing your worst day is technically material. So take notes. Oh man, one of my favorite responses ever to one of these topics from Verdant Butterfly. That was incredible. I mean, there are so many great little nuggets of knowledge there about comedy and how to approach it. And I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with all of them. And if you haven't checked out some of Verdant Butterfly's comedy, by the way, it is side-splittingly funny. It is so funny. So this is someone who absolutely knows what they're talking about, and I highly recommend checking out her work if you're looking to try and write some comedy yourself. Next up, Emil Ottoman says, "No one's ever going to tell anyone this, but writing comedy on purpose is one of the hardest things that you can do as an author. It is not just something that you do. Comedy is its own art with its own rules and its own beats, and timing and culture and everything else, and part of the problem is sometimes writers, fiction writers that is, don't have a grounding of some sort in the theory of comedy and how it works. So in those cases, you're only going to stumble upon comedy in your writing on accident, and you will try to replicate that accident over and over again. This isn't to say that something can't be comedic or have comedic elements to it and not be perfectly fine, but I will say, however, it is worth learning the theories behind comedy if you want to be the author of a true comedic novel or story or whatever, unless you're just naturally funny, which is also something that a lot of people are." Yeah, I really agree with Emil here. I think this has a lot of wisdom to it. Comedy is its own kind of art. And its own skill and creative muscle that you have to kind of exercise. And there are some basic fundamentals to it that kind of apply to all kinds of humor. So it is good to know that going in. And also, to Emil's point, a lot of times you stumble upon comedy on accident. So if anything, just if you're trying to write a story that has comedic elements, let it play out. Let those accidents and those weird situations organically come up. If you're a plotter, leave yourself some room for pantsing, and that might bring up comedy in a way that allows you to identify your own unique style. So great stuff from Emil. Next up, Sarah Tinney says, "I think it is hard to explain, like when someone says, 'Tell me a joke,' and your mind goes blank. I've always used humor to try to make people laugh in real life, and I think that flows over to my writing. I had fun in Flash Fiction February with satire, which I hadn't really done before. It's also a fine line between putting something I find amusing and hoping people get it without having to spell out the joke. For example, in my Assassin story, the Assassin Organization acronym spelled F-U-C-K, which I thought was hilarious. And then later, I had a character say it to try to help people see it. I also think growing up reading Hitchhikers and watching a lot of British comedy and having a larrikin dad all helped develop my humor, and seeing how others write it, I think that helped. All that is to say, I don't know what I do or how I do it. I definitely don't think I could write a comedy like a sitcom. I just add funny moments like you would have in a real life conversation." No, that's great. And it's actually crazy to me that Sarah doesn't have a ton of experience writing comedy, because her stories were so funny in Flash Fiction February when she took that satirical approach that I was convinced this is someone who does this all the time. So that's crazy. Yeah, honestly, though, it works. The jokes really landed. So great stuff. I hope to see more of that from Sarah. All right, next up, Mark Armstrong says, "It's what I do best. I'm like Charlie Chaplin or Harold Lloyd making a silent movie, always looking to squeeze in one more gag. A lot of it's junk, of course, so you have to remember to be a no-mercy editor at the end. I remember reading somewhere that audiences need comedy as relief in serious stories. Director Frank Capra was very good at the same, so was Charles Dickens, and there are some very funny lines in noir films." Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Mark Armstrong, his jokes are always on point, so I would absolutely take a look at his work. And yes, as he said here, even the more serious stories in the world need comedy as a way to just give people a chance to breathe, as we heard from one of the other responses. So that's great input there. Next up, K.L. Brooks says, "Yes, I think my favorite genre is dark comedy like Dale and Tucker vs. Evil, Ash vs. Evil Dead, What We Do in the Shadows, etc. I have a harder time connecting dark comedy in books, and that might be why I have gravitated towards writing that way. I think comedy is a really great way to process emotions. And a lot of the comedy that I write is like scene based. So like the opening of my next book is a woman sitting in a sobriety meeting, struggling with being there and grief. But then there's this weirdo following her out, and he tries to bite her, and then he gets hit by an ambulance. Sounds like a wild opening. Oh, that's great. Thank you for that input there from KL Brooks. And yeah, no, dark comedy is great. I love all the examples there. And yeah, the line about using it to process emotions is really interesting. I think people don't often realize that that is a valid, kind of outcome of comedy. So that's really good stuff. All right. And that concludes our writing discussion this week. Thank you to everybody who shared your answers. Remember to stay tuned for those. They typically come out on Wednesdays. This week was a little different. But every Wednesday, my subscriber chat will have a new discussion topic. And if you respond, I will read your answer on the show. So thanks again to everybody who contributed. All right. Next up is our featured guest interview. My guest this week is a highly accomplished author, podcaster, and founder/CEO of Gold Comedy, which is the comedy school, professional network, and content studio where women and non-binary folks grow their comedy careers and creative side hustles while building powerful communities and making funny stuff. Through their classes, celebrity speaker series, digital short teams, mics, shows, and more, members of Gold Comedy build skills, rack up laurels, and nail their showbiz goals. So, without further ado, let's check out this week's featured guest interview. All right, everybody. And this week on the Saved as Draft podcast, I'm really excited to welcome to the show the CEO and founder of Gold Comedy. Please welcome to the show, Lynn Harris. Lynn, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So let's start off by having you tell us just a little bit about yourself and kind of your career and creative journey thus far.
Sure. I'm old, so you got some time. I'll work backwards. You mentioned Gold Comedy. I'm the founder and CEO of Gold, which is the mostly online comedy school and professional network and content studio where women and non-binary creators and others build comedy careers and creative side hustles, comedy passion projects, become part of a powerful community and make funny stuff that actually gets seen on all kinds of stages and screens. And Gold is really kind of the culmination or the inevitable result of sort of the combination of the engines of my career and my passions for decades. And that is the combo of comedy, love comedy, writing, producing, making things, and all wrapped up in a nice package of social change, particularly gender equality, but really whatever you got that needs to be changing. I feel strongly that comedy is not the only thing by any stretch that can help drive that change, but it certainly plays a big role. So it's kind of all of that rolled into one. And those are I spent years as a journalist, producer, culture change strategist, which sounds fancy, but it's basically like you get to watch TV and make funny things. And all of those things rolled in, an author, so many things, and all those skills all those tributaries kind of led to where we are now.
Very nice. Okay. So you mentioned how this is kind of the culmination, like you said, of all of your career thus far. So how long did you have that vision for Gold Comedy before you started it?
Since about 1983, when I was a teenager. No, not really, but I'm happy to tell that story. The most direct answer to your question is that I've been noodling on it in one way or another for about 10 years. Okay. But the version that's out in the world now, more like 5. So I started out with experimenting with doing stand-up training for teen girls, and in fact, we had the first online class. This is before the pandemic. The first online, on-demand class, comedy class that had ever been developed for teen girls. And side note, how do you teach comedy to teen girls? You teach comedy. It really wasn't that different from any other comedy class, honestly. What made it different was that if you looked around, especially at the time, at all the other comedy classes on the online education platforms, I didn't find one that wasn't run by a white dude, which in and of itself, no problem. Right. But the fact that I couldn't find the one that wasn't was a problem. And most of them, I kid you not, and this is just still bizarre to me, most of them like their first example joke was like mean to their girlfriend.
Mm.
And again, and like I'm too old to be offended by that, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, bro, do you want to alienate half of your potential customers?
Yeah.
Because you did.
Yeah.
So in creating curriculum for teen girls, it basically just didn't do that.
Right.
Um, but when I started doing some stuff with teen girls, it was great. They were great. They were a riot. But then for every teen girl who came through what we were doing, there was like a parent or a friend who worked in comedy or so was like, could I join? Am I too old? Am I too
Mm.
old? Can I do
Mm.
this? And I
Hmm.
thought I better listen to this. And so that's one of the reasons that it evolved over so much time that I pivoted early on to making it for grown-ups
Hmm.
and not for young people, but for grown-ups and for people who were already pretty dedicated in one way or another to comedy, whether they had already had experience or whether they were very serious, not
Hmm.
necessarily certainly about possibly about comedy as a full-time job in some form, or very serious about a comedy project that it meant the world to them to get out into the world, such as, they're not going to quit their day job as a surgeon or a PR executive, but they have a TV show that they actually want to see if they can make and
Mm.
write that pilot and get it out and do both. So we evolved to catering to in particular to um, to that crowd. But the thing that happened in the 80s is very short version of that is that I was on it was like the event of the Jewish youth group event of the year. It was the ski trip up to called Winter Wonderland up to
Mm.
Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm from Boston.
Mm.
And they still Winter Wonderland continues. I was
Mm.
looking it up. It still happens. And
Wow.
it was so much fun. And one night or the Saturday night sleepover of the weekend event, a bunch of dudes, one of whom was very likely Adam Sandler, which I don't remember exactly, but I remember him and the age tracks and the everything else tracks.
Hmm.
And he was one of the goofballs, of course. Bunch of dudes like borrowed a bunch of girls' nightgowns and did a sort of sloppy impromptu drag skit. I wouldn't even call
Mm.
it a sketch. I'd call it a skit.
Hmm.
And I say sloppy, not in a disparaging way. I just mean that they weren't really rehearsed. I mean, they were just being goofballs, right?
Right.
And it brought the house down, and which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Hmm.
But I remember thinking, and it was for sure all dudes. And I remember thinking, like, I was in the, my gang was funny. Like we were goofballs too.
Hmm.
But I remember thinking, my first thought was, okay, what are the girls gonna do?
Mm.
And then like just as fast, I thought, because like, I don't know. And it wasn't that we couldn't be as funny as them. Of course we could, duh.
Mm. Mm.
But the world wasn't ready.
Mm.
Like there was no way that a bunch of girls could do something as sloppy, and I don't mean sloppy in a bad way,
Right.
um, and as impromptu and spontaneous and under rehearsed and get the same result. I
Mm.
swear to you, I knew that like everyone would be like, what are the girls doing? What are they doing? Like we couldn't just like put on the boys' pajamas and get the same reaction, right?
Right. Right.
And that's just not how the world wasn't ready. Like that's not how we were viewed. We would have had to have like a writer's room,
Mm. Hmm.
and good lighting, and work twice as hard to get half the same result because of the reception that I knew would happen, no matter how hard we tried. So, and that it was kind of a bummer. It stuck with me. It didn't
Yeah.
ruin the weekend, but it
Right.
stuck with me, obviously, because that was like freaking 1983, and here we are.
Right. 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 Kind of planted that seed for what you would do in the future. Yeah.
Right. To just like
Absolutely.
normalize women's comedy, or
Right.
I don't even like to call it women's comedy, honestly, but like normalize women doing comedy.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and
Absolutely.
and yeah, and not make it different, not make it harder for us. It's hard enough for everybody. It's
Right.
hard for straight white kids, you
Right.
know?
Right.
But what if we can make it easier for the people for whom it is still the hardest because of the gatekeeping, because of the lingering sexism and biases, because of all that stuff and all the things that are honestly true in comedy that are true everywhere in other industries as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, the seed was planted in Manchester, New Hampshire in 1980, I don't know, 4 or 5 like that.
Okay, awesome, awesome. No, I really appreciate that background. So my next question here, wanted to also kind of talk about what was that moment when you knew that you wanted to become a writer, and then how did you get into comedy specifically? What was that like for you?
I did not, I'd be lying if I said I had clear, 10-year plan
Okay.
or um or a specific goal, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be the next so and so.
Mm-hmm.
It was vaguer than that. And I mean, I don't want to say deeper than that, but it was just kind of a knowledge. And it was kind of like, the like a giant cartoon magnet,
Mm-hmm.
like those horseshoe shaped magnets that are like the size of a building in like Roadrunner cartoons.
Right.
Um, I was just kind of drawn to doing or just comedy, not even doing comedy, just like I just wanted to be near it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
that meant. Like I didn't even think about it in high school. Like I auditioned for the secondary character,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for example, because like growing up, the soundtrack of our house was Carol Burnett, I Love Lucy, The Muppet Show,
Mm-hmm.
The Jeffersons, like all Laugh-In, all Monty Python. It was just comedy, and my parents weren't in entertainment, but that was just what was regarded as quality stuff, and so I just grew up around it,
Mm.
and it made me laugh and feel good, and I liked it. So I was just drawn to it, and I think I was a little more purposeful about being a writer, but there's not a lot of not a long walk between writing, like journalistic writing and comedy, in
Right.
terms of the discipline that you learn
Mm-hmm.
around the act of writing
Mm-hmm.
and directing your writing and your purpose of what you're writing in different directions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Okay, great, great. So, my next question here, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the interview. You talked about how comedy is one of the ways that we can kind of shift, things for the better in terms of the overall kind of society and, inclusivity and stuff like that. So, I'm curious, like over the course of your career, can you think of any examples, or share any stories about where comedy was able to kind of accomplish something significant like that? I'm curious.
Sure. I mean, there's some that I can point to and stuff that I've done, but there's some of the big ones are like Ellen coming out.
Mm-hmm.
This is an oldie, but it's a goodie.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine because it seems so quaint now. But when Ellen DeGeneres came out on her sitcom, and the
Mm-hmm.
point is it was on her sitcom,
Right.
um, it was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
Toward wasn't the only thing that we needed. It wasn't the same as a law, but it created that kind of things like that have mass appeal,
Mm-hmm.
that have mass visibility, and that come to you in a comedy package. Her sitcom was kind of girl next door kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, the girl next door is gay,
Mm.
and that is fitting, queerness in that narrative was revolutionary,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was so like relatively easy to take. It's like, well, I know her, like she lives right here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and it was sort of a light LITE way to introduce to do the powerful act of helping normalize something that people did not think was normal.
Mm.
And so a more recent example on television would be, and there's tons of them, but one would be the one I particularly liked was a reboot of One Day at a Time.
Mm-hmm.
And normally I'm like, it was great before, mess with a hit. Why reboot? Like do something original. But in
Right.
this case, it was very kind of canny and great because the family is now an immigrant family.
Mm.
And they have, I'm making these percentages up, but they had like, 70% like regular American family problems, like the kids won't do their homework,
Mm-hmm.
um, and 30% problems that had to do with their immigration status, with their being different, with their being others, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and by mixing that all together, once again, it just normalized, oh yeah, they're an American family too.
Right. Right. Okay.
And it created opportunities, like a structure and opportunities for just regular baseline compassion for them.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like already the same as you, except like once every, if you're white, whatever. And then once every while, they're also a little different, but they're already the same. So okay, I'll take it. A bunch of things. I worked for a while at a human rights organization called Breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
That was like kind of perfect for me because they're they weren't they've restructured a little bit, but at the time they weren't your sort of classic human rights organization. No shade. We need
Mhm.
classic human rights organizations. But what they did was use pop culture
Mm.
and pop culture tools and pop culture products to help make human rights issues real and relevant and actionable,
Mhm.
including in the United States, where we almost always think of civil rights, but not
Mm.
human rights in the United States.
Right.
So one thing that we did was we framed violence against women or gender-based violence as a human rights issue,
Mm.
because it is.
Right.
And but then we got up like to show PSAs at NASCAR races,
Mm. Mhm.
which, there isn't a bigger audience than, the Jumbotron at a NASCAR race.
Right. Yeah.
And we created kind of a funny, goofy, gritty animation
Mm.
that depicted one dude kind of calling out another dude for kind of being a doofus to his girlfriend.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like shamey, it wasn't scoldy. I mean, of course it was, but it was dudes among dudes. And it was
Right.
kind of fun because they were like goofy details, and it was like, it was an animation. It's kind of funny.
Mhm. Mhm.
And but to be able to create to deliver a message like that, like, which is basically like, bro, other dudes don't think that's cool,
Right. Mhm.
is a very potent message. But it came in this package of like, we're all at the racetrack. It's animated, it's humorous in some ways.
Mhm.
And it also sent the message that if one dude stands up, the other people stand with that dude.
Right.
And we had the whole thing take place racetrack. So you kind of saw like the whole crowd kind of go whoop
Mm.
and do the wave with the guy who spoke out, right? And so
Right.
it also creates this permission structure for the dude who speaks out, like
Mm.
less more than it's scolding the other guy. It's like, if you're excuse me, if you're brave enough excuse me, if you're brave enough to be the one who says, bro, then actually everyone agrees with you, and they already did. You're
Mm.
just the one who, had the chutzpah to stand up in the first place. And anyway, so like this is like a fun package. Like, it's
Mhm.
not a lecture, it's not an explanation, it's show not tell. And it's at NASCAR, and we got the chance to that shown at the Indy 500, at a whole bunch of major races. It was shown on the screen in where people tailgate outside Lambeau Field. Like,
Mm.
it was that's huge.
Mhm.
We didn't have the right kind of, it wasn't that long ago, but we didn't have the sort of high tech measurements that we have now.
Right.
But we were able to there were like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the number of eyeballs alone that we reached with that,
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. Last thing I'll say is, like, culture change is hard to measure. So like,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that like you wouldn't necessarily measure from that the number of people who changed their minds entirely and then took a measurable action in the next 24 hours, to show it, like that,
Mhm.
that stood up against patriarchy. Like, you can't measure it in a time-based or action-based way necessarily. But what you do know is that those narratives and images and ideas sink in,
Right.
and it makes people go, huh. And then maybe it's a year later, that a guy's like, actually, bro, stand down, or whatever it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so I can't give you an example of the results, which is what you asked. But although we did have good anecdotal stuff, but we know there is research backing the idea that culture change strategies like that do work.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic answer. I really love how you explained how comedy can be used because great writing always elicits some sort of emotion, right? And so with comedy, it's like that's very universal. If you can make somebody laugh, then you have their attention, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you said, you use that to deliver a deeper message. I love that so much. So I think those are perfect examples. I really appreciate you telling us that.
When you
Um,
laugh, you're on the same side, right? So
right.
you're not being scolded. You're being drawn in.
Right, exactly. No, I love that answer so much. So my next question here is then, over the course of your career, what are some of the biggest lessons that you yourself have learned when it comes to writing comedy specifically?
A very broad one is find your people.
Mm.
And this is like your life lesson also. This is your everything lesson. And it certainly applies to comedy. It means a whole bunch of things. It means you need to find your people in order to kind of do the work.
Mm-hmm.
because it can be lonely, it can be isolating. You don't have a, depending on how you work. And, we're talking about, stand up, but we're also talking about um, sketch writing, TV writing, all the, there's so many forms, and more and more every day that
Right.
comedy takes, including writing marketing copy, writing brand, brands are trying harder than ever to be funny because 4 to 5 consumers for their brands to be funny, which is a whole nother thing that's kind of for sometimes for reasons that are not obvious. So someone's got to write that stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for stand-up, for TV writing, you're not necessarily in one workplace for years and years, or even more than a year, more than a season. You might be, but you might not be. And so you have to find your people
Mm-hmm.
that are not necessarily the people that you punch in with 9 to 5 every day, just to help you to be the bedrock of support, collaboration, etc. Just to be able to do your job in a healthy, fun way.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to find your people who are your crowd. I'm sorry, your people who are your audience, to be more precise.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are like, if you say, oh, my audience is everyone, you're wrong.
Right.
That's also like a marketing chestnut. If you say, oh, our product is for everyone, it's not. And
Right.
that's okay. It shouldn't be.
Right.
So to understand, it's not that you have to sort of do the whole, marketing exercise of creating an avatar for who your customer is. And like, I don't mean that,
Right.
but like, decide who's going to like your jokes. They're probably a lot like you. And write jokes. Like if you're writing jokes for yourself, then you're writing jokes for them. And that's how you're going to succeed. You can't be all comics to all people. Like you can't.
Right.
And you shouldn't be. It's, it's better this way.
Right.
So I mean that, and I mean, find your people in those two ways at the, that's like the broadest and I think most important advice I can give. It also means that like it also helps you like not feel like you're a failure if a particular show doesn't go well.
Yeah.
It might just be random. It often is, but it also might be like, they're not my people. Okay.
Right. No, I think that's really good advice. Absolutely. So my next question here, who or what are some of your biggest sources of inspiration? Like, where do you go to get inspired, or who's inspired you over the years?
As much as I did not dedicate myself much, I've done some to TV writing. My biggest inspiration next to stand-up is our great funny TV shows. Because they make me happy to be alive, honestly. Like the ones that are just so silly yet brilliant. Like I love the silly ones like Girls Five Eva and Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock, and the ones that are a little bit ridiculous, but not just completely farcical. They're ridiculous with a point, or they're ridiculous in a character-driven way. I just find them just such a goddamn delight. I'm like, oh, the world is a dumpster fire, but we live with humans who make stuff like this.
Yeah.
It just, at like a baseline, it just makes me happy. Same is true of stand-up, of really inspired. And I mean, I'm easy to please because I used to belong to the Friars Club, and I love that brand of humor, just like raunchy, sure, but I mean like old-fashioned, vaudeville, the same as the Muppet Show. Like it's old-fashioned humor, same as drag. I mean, RuPaul's Drag Race is the same. It's like old-fashioned punny, like it's the first way we taught our kids to tell jokes. We'd be like, "Hey Sam," and we taught them to say like, "Yeah, mommy." You ever wonder why, or how come, why did the chicken cross the road? I don't know, mommy. Why did the chicken cross the road? Like we've taught them that structure because it's the best. But anyway, but I'm also really inspired by stand-ups who, without necessarily being like avant-garde or recreating the genre, do something that no one else has done. And I'm thinking of the style of Maria Bamford. I'm thinking of the style of Bob the Drag Queen, who are just different. And there are many like them. But that always inspires me, not directly because I can't stay up late enough to do stand-up anymore, but just again that like comedy is just so good.
Yeah.
Like we're not done making good comedy. There's like infinite new paths to create and follow.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. That's fantastic. So, my next question here, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your published works because you are, of course, an author. So yeah, I wanted to know in terms of, what's kind of the overall journey that you've had as an author. You know, what books have you published, and maybe tell us a little bit about kind of what readers can expect.
Sure. Well, you can buy, they're all collectibles at this point. So
Yeah.
you can find them for like 0.01 cents on Amazon, unless I signed them at like some bookstore in Michigan, and someone bought it and resold it. So that's maybe that one's going to be like $5. So I wrote I think all of my books back when publishing was a little different and honestly a little easier to break into. And what I mean is there was just more of a direct line between having an idea and getting it published.
Hmm.
The big difference now is you kind of need to have a platform first. Like the idea isn't good enough. They're going to be like, great idea. How many followers?
Right.
And so yeah, that's why I'm being sort of self-deprecating. Because not that I don't have some sort of following now, but it would be harder for me to publish books now than it was when I was doing it. But I'm still very proud of them. It all started with a cookbook
Mm.
that my that I did with two of my besties from college, because at the time, and we graduated from college in 1990, so this is the 80s. In the 80s, they had just started I won't get too far into this, but they had dorm food or college campus food
Mhm.
had just started getting more expansive, and there was always like a salad bar, and there was always like some peanut butter and jelly, and there was always like some other stuff. It's not like a freaking like fancy food court it is now, but in any case, we wrote a cookbook called Tray Gourmet, which showed you Tray Gourmet, which showed you how to use the other stuff to kind
Mm.
of cook, and the microwave, whatever, to improvise and cook your own stuff if you
Right.
in addition to what they were serving. And it was like full of puns, and it was silly and fun. And it was the first of its kind, and it's still in print, bitches.
Nice.
Um, so it's totally irrelevant now. My other books that are out of print are much more relevant, because food courts are completely college, food is completely different, but it's still a fun
Right.
read.
Yeah.
We also have my creative partner, one of the people from the cookbook, the illustrator, and I co-created this is a whole big chunk of my life, which an amazing chunk, co-created a superhero named Breakup Girl, who
Mm.
helps people with romantic emergencies.
Mm.
We have heroes that can bend steel bars. How about one who can mend broken hearts?
Right.
And we were bragging, but true. First, she was the main character in a book that I pitched and sold, Humorous Guide to Surviving a Breakup.
Mm.
And we created her as the main character to kind of to fill some space and give it a point of view.
Hmm.
And then we turned her into a website with an advice column that was literally an overnight success, which normally doesn't happen on the
Mm.
internet, in 1997.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. And then then we got acquired by Oxygen in like 98, and had an animated series of interstitials on Oxygen. Another book that was a compilation of advice plus more stuff. She had animated adventures. It was a whole thing. Everything went to hell in the .com bust. That's a topic for another podcast
Right.
when there's, whiskey involved, but we got the property back.
Right.
And Chris and I have been collaborating on various things, various comebacks or ideating on various comebacks for Breakup Girl since then. But that was two books. And then I no, it wasn't secret. Actually, was my name on it? I can't remember. Another writing partner and I co-wrote the book that went with MTV's Singled Out, with
Hmm.
a game show.
Hmm.
And the funniest thing was that MTV sent us to like do publicity on the book, and everyone that we talked to like thought we had literally hung out with Jenny McCarthy and whatever to write the book. And so we would like make things up, and
Yeah.
nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, it was all nice about her,
Yeah.
but and it wasn't like we were not, it was details. But just to entertain ourselves. But it was a really funny book, actually. It was another funny dating book. And then I have two novels. Is this all? Yeah, I think so. I have two novels that are about the same detective, or the
Mm.
same girl detective, named Lola Somerville. And the first one is loosely based on our experiences at Oxygen. And
Hmm.
not gonna lie, the experiences we had as creators were amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. But the experience of feeling kind of duped by the whole situation was not amazing.
Mm.
And I am not private about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we imagined so the book is really not a shocking tell-all because it's made up out of my head,
Mm-hmm.
but it things got so bad that we were like something far more powerful than even incompetence must be at play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invented an idea that there was a conspiracy,
Mm.
and that's the book. But it's humor, it's a satire. And then I
Okay.
wrote another, yeah, and then I wrote a follow-up book with the same main character, Lola Somerville, called Death by Chick Lit,
Mm.
where she's a writer, and she um and sh and all of the other like it girl authors are being murdered, and she is outraged that she's not one of them.
Right. Okay. I love it. I love it. That's amazing. Really, really interesting kind of journey that you've had there, especially as you get into fiction a little bit. Do you plan on doing more fiction like with this character? Is that something that's in the pipeline?
I love Lola so much. I've thought about it. I've just gotten a little, this is terrible. Like, this is such a bummer, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Like, those books sold fine.
Hmm.
But they like the way publishing works now, they would have had to be like, no publisher will be interested, as hilarious as they are.
Yeah.
It's just numbers. They're going to be like, well, how well did they sell? And I'll be like, I don't know. We didn't even have numbers. We didn't even have tools for that back then. And they'll be like, next. It's
Mm.
not, and that's not I mean, it's a bummer, but like, I don't know, publishing's a business. I'm not like bitter about that.
Right.
They gotta do what they gotta do, but it's not the same. But I am working on a new pilot, for Breakup Girl updated for 2026. So that's where I'm
Cool.
having my fiction fun right now.
Awesome. Awesome. That's amazing. Okay, great. Yeah, so next up, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Gold Comedy, because I feel like a lot of people, listeners of the show, are going to be hearing about it for the first time. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more kind of what like what's happening this year with Gold Comedy, and then how can people kind of get involved and get started with it if they're interested?
Sure. Well, the second question first. It's super easy because, as I said, most of it's online. So,
Yeah.
in fact, pretty much all of it. So we do have things happen in New
Hmm.
York City and elsewhere, but the core of it is online. So wherever you are, if you're curious about comedy, if you're serious about comedy, if you want a place that is certainly going to help you build skills, but really also help you do the thing, like
Hmm.
make the thing, write the thing, perform the thing, collaborate on the thing. This is where we can do that because we have, between our powerful professional community and our larger network and just our know-how, we can help you make that web series. We have 2 web series out now. We can help you put on your solo show. We have people who graduate from our solo show classes and like go do their things and tour their shows. So, and we also, just if you want to just try stand up, do the show online with your class. Like, it's not all, a huge production. And it's all easy to do online and take it offline if you need to. So I can say more about that in a minute, but
Hmm.
what was the first question? That was the second question.
Yeah. I was just kind of curious, like what's going on in 2026 here with Gold Comedy.
Oh, yeah,
Are there
yeah.
any kind of like
Okay.
big events or anything happening? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. One of the things that's going on is what is typically always going on, which is great, which is that when you join, with some exceptions, we have it structured so that you join for the year, and then people typically renew and stay for at least 2 years, and that's because they like it, and it's also because when you join, you then have unlimited access to all the stuff,
Okay.
all the classes, the events with comedy. We have a speaker series with comedy pros and celebrities. We have workshops all the time. We have 2 mics a week. There's just, and all of it's online, so super easy. So what people do is either some of them, like some people take our stand-up class over and over and over just for the structure and accountability,
Yeah.
but we're also adding tons of new stuff to your question.
Mm.
Let's see, what have we added? We've added a pilot writing boot camp,
Okay.
which is structured especially around just like get it done, like
Hmm.
get the draft done.
Hmm.
It's the first draft can be bad,
Right.
but you can't go anywhere until you can.
Right.
So it's that. We're adding to our web series. We're building on our web series coursework and really helping you prepare, like leave the class like with everything, with like the package you need to actually go start shooting.
Okay.
So we are when in our second, this was new this year, and we're doing it again because it was successful. We have a challenge called 30 by 30. And basically you write 30 jokes in 30 days. And that's free actually. So it's just sort of like an introduction to the experience. So anybody can join
Okay.
free. And we have just a cool space online where that gives you a prompt every day, and you
Mm-hmm.
can use the prompt or not.
Mm.
But it gives you a prompt. You get set up with an accountability buddy. So like everyone's like writing something a day, and it doesn't have to be good. This is the practice that it builds. The idea is to, yes, produce a body of work, but also to build the habit of producing something every day, meaning you have to create the circumstances where you can produce something every day. You got to carve out, even if it's 10 minutes, you
Mm.
got to carve that out. You got to, so, and people have told us that, like, we did it in January, and people have told us that they're still doing it, that it made them in some form or another, that they built the practice and the habit. And now they kind of wake up and go, I got to write a joke. Um, so we're building on that and doing it again. And I can't say all the details now, but we are gonna dive even deeper into web series because
Mm.
it's really such a great, Broad City was a web series, Drunk History was a web series,
Right.
Insecure was a web series. And they're actually within reach to create,
Mm.
like by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not cheap, not easy, but within reach.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a great way, they're a great way for people to make a thing that can live on it, that can stand on its own as your work, that can
Mm-hmm.
lead to other things, or that thing itself. There is precedent for that thing being built into another thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I mean, sorry, that thing being built into itself as a TV show, whatever it is. So we're building additional opportunities for people to come and make a web series. It's not even called the web, it's still called a web series, but it's fancy now. It's called mid-form.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay. Very
mid-form
nice, very
content.
nice. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love that you called out prompts specifically because I just wanted to mention real quick, my audience and my listeners, they love writing prompts. I just hosted Flash Fiction February for the second time this year, last month, and it was the most successful writing challenge I've ever hosted. Like
That's
I've just noticed
awesome.
that when you give them a prompt, like you said, it really
Yep.
kind of sparks the imagination and gets things moving creatively, which is awesome. So I love that you
Yep.
called that out.
Yeah, they love our we've developed, we have like, it's a freebie. This is why you should sign up for Gold's mailing list, because you
Right.
get a freebie that you get. Oh no, actually no, no, it's when you first join Gold, you get immediately our list of 100 favorite prompts, but we keep writing more and more for our various challenges and stuff. So,
Mm.
and we just published an article at goldcomedy.com
Mm.
with some of our favorite writing prompts. They can be used for comedy. They don't have to. Like we also tell people, this is like some crossover between me and you. Like we tell people, whatever the prompt inspires you to write
Hmm.
doesn't have to like emerge as a fully formed joke. It doesn't have to be funny at all. It's just, it gives you an entry point to like, oh, that's a thing, that's a bit of material in my life that I hadn't thought about. Let me
Hmm.
open that door.
Right, right.
And
And
you might
and
write
and
a joke about it later.
right. And so if people participate in your prompts, is there a way for them to kind of submit for either feedback or to like kind of show it to the broader community? Or
Yeah,
what's that look like?
yep, it's that our platform works that way. We live on a
Okay.
platform called Mighty Networks, and the
Hmm.
space that, so I don't do, I'm not a tech founder, I'm not a software person.
Right.
So this was, we brought the party, and this is the space we use. And the space for this 30 by 30 challenge, yeah, you unlock the prompts day, there are prompts unlocked day by day, and then there's
Hmm.
a feed. And then we invite people to post they wrote on the feed.
Okay.
And so anyone that's part of the challenge can see the feed. And
Okay.
so like you can tag your buddy, you can say like, here's my thing, and then walk away for the next day. Because really the main point is just to produce.
Yeah.
But of course, if you want feedback, you can say, well, is there a funny word I can end on? Or is there a different way to open this? Or, absolutely, people do that all the time.
Okay,
And
great.
people
No, that's
respond.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, my last question I have for you here is something that I ask every guest that comes onto the show. In this case, I would like to know, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's trying to get into writing comedy? Where should they start? What should they focus on first?
The first thing, honestly, mindset.
Mm,
Because because well, a couple of mindset things, and then I'll tell you how they apply practically.
yeah.
First of all, we talk to do that, and you're going to want it, but that's also part of your mindset because any, you know, like or new show that you go into,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't get a laugh, it really doesn't matter on a
Mm-hmm.
given joke. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, because now is your time that you got to do the reps.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a joke 10 times in 10 different places and it's still not getting a laugh, okay, that's some data that you can
Yeah.
use.
Right.
Sure. But it doesn't like mean anything about your success or future as a comic.
Mm-hmm.
It means that like they're not your people, they're not paying attention because that's how mics are. Like who knows? The point is to just not worry about, it's not about the response so much as it is, about, yes, getting your reps, but also you just sort of getting used to being on stage, getting, wrapping your head around what you're saying, learning what like the mouth feel, so to speak, of your jokes. And the other mindset piece is a lot of like, it's kind of a good exercise to start out by picking a comic that you like and
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what you like about them and
Mm-hmm.
trying to do some of those things the same. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the same as copying their jokes. That's obviously you're not going to do that, but it's a good starting point. But the point of that exercise should not to turn out to be like them,
Mm-hmm.
but to certainly give yourself, sure, the whatever jumping off point you want to get yourself started. But really the goal is to write jokes that only you can write.
Okay.
So they can all be on the same topic. Like at the end of the day, we all talk about like our, annoying jobs and weird families, right? Like,
Right. Right.
but like, what's your take? What's your take? And then that leads me to, you don't have to change who you are in order to be funny and do comedy.
Mm.
Sometimes people think like, if I was only, I mean, I'm kind of shy, I'm too shy, or I don't have enough confidence. And uh, shyness, do you know how shy comics are? Like, I mean, like half of us are introverts, and like, I mean, we're
Right.
just like a microcosm of people. Like, there's no one way to be. And also, confidence is a complete red herring.
Mm.
It's just like, I don't think it's a thing. I just don't
Mm.
think it's a thing.
Yeah.
Um, because like, I mean, it's only a thing insofar as you can as it's the thing that makes you get past whatever perceived barriers they are to actually try something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like kind of, I don't know if that's confidence. Because you could be terrified the whole time and still do, like, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
don't know how like women are always like, well, if we just build women's confidence. And I'm like, well, I don't know. What if they freaking gave us more space? Like,
Right.
I don't know if it all hinges on confidence. So like, don't use confidence as a litmus test
Mm.
for whether you should or can get on stage or do the thing. Like it's a red herring. Like
Mm.
if you want to, you will just do it.
Right.
Or I don't mean that. It's not magical. If you want to, don't wait until you feel confident.
Yeah.
You're not going to,
Right.
or you might, but that's, you may or may not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just there it is. It's confidence is a feeling,
Yeah.
not a characteristic.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes you feel confident and sometimes you don't, and it's kind of irrelevant to
Mm.
just getting in your reps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So yeah, don't wait for a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then do find a friendly mic. Like you got to find a friendly mic.
Yeah.
There's no point in just beating your head against a wall in an unfriendly mic because there are friendly mics,
Mm-hmm.
much more than there used to be. And you do
Mm.
need to go to mics. You have to go to mics.
Right.
You have to because it's reps. It's reps, 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 reps.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Gold also has two friendly mics a week, and we also give feedback. So to your question, you can also get sort of live feedback because we have people come and do their jokes, and then we give them a compliment sandwich and say like, I love how you did this. I think you could even go deeper into this. And
Right.
also I love your ending. You know.
Right.
So and we're super friendly. So but other mics are too, for sure.
Okay.
So those are those are my examples. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my advice for people who just who want to get into it. Don't make up reasons not to, because they're all pretty much all not true.
Right, 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 right. No, that is fantastic advice. I love that. And I've always said the same thing about, and when it comes to feedback, I love the compliment sandwich that you said there. It's always balanced is kind of what I like, what I always say. So yeah, that's fantastic advice. I'm really excited for listeners to hear this interview because I think they're going to be super excited. We got some comedy writers in my community. I can think of a few off the top of my head that I feel like they're going to be running right over to Gold Comedy to take a look because I think it's a great
Amazing.
fit. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
should tell me when they do, if they do, and plus I'll send you a discount code. But for your people, because your people are my people, Bradley. But they should also tell me, because I will welcome them with extra open arms.
Okay, well that's fantastic. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, yeah, that's all the questions I had for you today, Lynn. But this was just an amazing interview. It was so great to get to know you and your journey thus far. And I'm really excited about what you're doing with Gold Comedy. I'm really excited to see how that grows in 2026 and beyond.
Thank you. And I also don't want to, I'll throw this in. I also don't want to, I was a little bit like publishing ain't what it used to, and I don't ain't what it used to be. And I don't want to discourage anybody either,
Right.
because what's true of writing now is also what's true of comedy now is also true of writing. And
Hmm.
we have a lot of people in Gold also who are humor writers,
Hmm.
right from McSweeney's and stuff like that. And Belladonna, there's so many good that to my point, there's so many good places to
Yeah.
write now. Some of them even pay. And there it used to be easier in some ways, but
Hmm.
there were fewer. It was maybe the bars were lower, but there were fewer outlets.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
Now the bar is higher, I think, for like the mainstream fancy places, but there's so many more respected and respectable places that will publish your quality work and that are quality places,
Hmm.
mostly because of the internet. And so I don't mean to like be a downer for your folks who are getting published, who are aspiring to, like,
Hmm.
it's not a bad world, it's just a different world,
Right.
and it's
Right.
it's better in many ways than it used to be.
No, that's good to know. I appreciate you sharing that. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on to the show here, Lynn. Like I said, this was fantastic.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, and a big thank you to Lynn again for coming onto the show. That was an amazing interview. A lot of great insights there. All right, and now let's talk about next week on Substack. So, as I've mentioned a few times, I've got family visiting this week, so our Power Up prompt is going to continue for one more week. So on next Friday's episode, I'll go through all the entries, and that means you've still got time to enter if you're interested. Also coming back next week is The Order of the Pawn, my first ever Devine series. We'll pick up after that big cliffhanger from January and find out soon what's next for the Realm of Devine. Beyond that, I'll be spending time with family this weekend, so if I'm not as active, that's why. I'll be back to normal next week, but in the meantime, I'm wishing you all a safe and productive week of writing. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off. Hey friends, Bradley here again. So, as I've mentioned, I've got family visiting this week, but as a special treat for dedicated listeners that always stay to the very end, I thought we could have them say hi. So, allow me to introduce you to Nolan and Kennedy. These are both children of the prompt goddess, Sarah Rush, and they're staying with us this week. Fun fact, Nolwenn and Kennedara from Devine are based on these two. Let's have them say hi.
My name is Kennedy, and my favorite color is pink, purple, and blue. And I have this kitchen set that I had from like years ago, and it's pretty cool.
Hello, my name is Nolan, and I am working on character designs for Devine.
And there you have it, a little bonus real-life lore for dedicated listeners. All right, everyone. I'll see you all next week. I'm signing off for real this time.